It's Halloween and I'm in the mood to make another mod for The Simpsons Hit and Run. Yeah, okay, my first mod was based on a Treehouse of Horror segment, but it wasn't particularly scary. This time I want something nice and creepy, and let's face it, The Simpsons has its fair share of disturbing moments that would be ripe for a Halloween mod. And I'm not just talking about Treehouse of Horror episodes either, but you'll see what I mean soon enough. One thing is for sure though, this mod is going to be a lot simpler than the Homer Cubed one. That thing took ages, and life is stressful enough without having to deal with the nightmare that is the hit and run road system. So no new traffic, no new map, no new sounds, let's keep it simple and play around with some new models for the Simpsons family. After all, my previous attempts at modelling only really stretched as far as making a few cylinders and cubes. Let's be a bit more ambitious. One part of Blender that caught my eye previously was the sculpting menu, where you could take your 3D model and basically turn it into a big blob of clay to prod and poke. Now that looks like fun. For this Halloween mod, I want to replicate some of the more distressing scenes from the show, add a bit of my own je ne sais quoi in the process, and try to make my own nightmare version of the Simpsons family. First up to the plate is our favourite TV mum, Marge. Poor Marge. I think she's unfairly overlooked as far as characters go. Sure, Homer is a standout, everyone went crazy for Bart Mania, and lots of people almost relish hating Lisa, but where's the recognition for Midge? Not only can she crump like a pro, but she has her solid moments too.
Mom, you're always trying to give me potatoes. What is it with you?
I just think they're neat.
I set up the mod once again using the basic mod template provided by Kenny Giles and copy and pasted the family models into the custom files folder. Then, using Lucas's Pure 3D editor, I could open them up and export them as XML models to use in Blender. Voila, we were ready to go. But what's the plan? Well, I'm going to be honest with you, this first one isn't particularly creepy, but it's the idea that prompted me to start this whole thing. I wanted to make the smeared Marge t-shirt a reality. No, not that kind of reality, though I really do want one of those. A reality in The Simpsons Hit and Run. What if Marge actually looked like that? A victim of some horrific accident that left her face permanently contorted, and without the benefit of a $2 discount. Lucky for me, a couple of Blender's sculpting tools include the Grab tool and the Elastic Deform tool, both of which would become vital assets for this whole mod. However, I quickly realised that the base models of the Simpsons family didn't quite have the number of polygons I would need to perform the intricate professional modelling I had planned. This was my David, and I needed it to be perfect. I subdivided all the edges to give me more leverage for the stretching that was about to occur. It did have the unfortunate side effect of making Marge's skin all blotchy looking, and her hair looked like a Mr. Whippy, but it was worth it. Using a reference image, I painstakingly lined it all up the best I could, and hey, I think it looks the part. I exported the model back into the Pure 3D editor to see it in all its textured glory. Oh my. Okay, it's missing the eye animations, but let's see how it looks in game. Oh, lovely stuff. But that left pupil is bugging me. It's looking particularly unsmeared, if I do say so myself. If we're striving for perfection, which of course we are, then it really should match the rest of the face. Except that pupil is an animated texture, which means we now need to enter the rabbit hole that is UV mapping. Actually, not so fast. At first I tried to avoid any UV madness by making my own stretched eye texture and applying it to the model, but that meant that Marge had one eye permanently open since it wasn't attached to any blinking animation. That's no good. I had enough trouble with UV mapping before, but they were about to occur all over again as I tried stretching the texture to create the perfect pupil prolonging. I tried squishing or stretching the UV, saved, exported the model, imported the model, booted up the game and checked how it looked. It was all just guesswork as to what I would actually need to do to get the proportions just right, so to cut a long story short, it took a lot of attempts. So many that I present to you a gallery of messed up Marge eyes. Anyways, I finally got it close enough to my liking, and doesn't she look beautiful? Okay, maybe I was wrong about this not being very creepy. I wouldn't like to meet her down a dark alleyway at night. But that was one down, 3 more to go. With a lot learned during the process of making Marge, Homer's new Halloween model was a breeze in comparison. It was also easy to pick what to do since there's a particular scene from The Simpsons that is always noted for its disturbing nature, and it's not even in a Treehouse of Horror segment. It's this bit from the episode Brother from the Same Planet, where Bart imagines Homer as he melts into a skeletal zombie corpse. It just comes out of nowhere, which is probably why it's seen as one of the show's scariest moments. Oh, it's perfect. Off to Blender with Homer loaded up, and once again I started by subdividing the model to give me more topology to play with. Though saying the whole thing was a breeze in comparison is a little bit of a white lie, since I first tried following a tutorial for how to make things melt in Blender. It just made sense, right? That's what happens in the show, but when I tried it here, well, it was just a bit too much. It's less a melted look and more, well, whatever that is. I went back to basics, subdivided just the head and sculpted it manually. First of all, let's Voldemortize Homer and push that nose back where it came from. Smooth out those brows and open up that mouth so we can get some big lovely teeth in there. Getting these angles just right was finicky but a lot of fun, grabbing and stretching, smoothing bits out. I could have spent hours and hours on this, but we've got other things to do. Once his mouth was open, I subdivided it again so I could start putting out and growing teeth. There were numerous points where this model looked absolutely hideous. Here's one of them. Sadly, all this pushing and pulling did rip the model apart a bit, so I felt like a proper surgeon going in and stitching his mouth vertices back together. Hey, just call me Dr. Muckluck. As a quick test of how things stood, I added the eye texture to these newly formed gnashers since they needed to be white. What I forgot from 5 minutes ago making Marge is that the eye was obviously animated, so when I checked Homer in game, he did have the unfortunate side effect of a blinking mouth. Oh dear. Apart from that, everything was looking a-okay. I added some more meltiness to the ears and mouth, and then it was time to separate all the textures. On the right hand side you can see all the different groups of faces which were assigned their own texture. I split up the head topology so I could add in some red bloodiness, and left a few patches out so the flecks of yellow skin stayed put. His signature 5 o'clock shadow was blended into the skin, and I added in some black spots for the nose and eye shadows, as well as the teeth and gums. I pieced it all back together in the Pure 3D editor, crossed my fingers and loaded up the game. Oh, it's hideous, it's wonderful. And even better, because I didn't mess around with the model too much and break any skeletal joints, the mouth still moves properly when Homer talks. The parents of this nightmare family were done. Time to move on to the children. Oh, Bart, you were a tricky one. I had a lot of trouble deciding on what to do for him that would be suitably nightmarish. Sure, he's got his twin brother Hugo, but even then he's not that creepy. He's just a bit raggedy. Not to mention he's actually the good twin. And then I remembered when Bart turned into a horrible freak, according to Marge, after his head was switched out for flies in Treehouse of Horror 8. Let's perform our own gene blending in Blender and find a fly model to work with. It turns out there aren't that many high quality 3D models of houseflies to download for free online. There are some amazing ones for $249, sure, but I'm a cheapskate and anyway, I think they're a bit overkill for what we need. I ended up finding this basic model on SketchUp by the user Neon and imported that into Blender along with Bart himself. With hindsight, what I should have done is just create the fly head from scratch. I mean, come on, look at it, it's basically just 3 blobs with a tubey bit for a mouth. Fiddling around with this imported model and trying to incorporate its topology was a massive pain, especially when I started using the sculpting tool. If there's anything to take away from this video, apart from wondering why on earth I did all this, it's not to take the easy way out at the start. Put in the effort at first and it will pay off further down the line, believe me. Anyway, I stripped back the fly model to just its head and wondered what I'd do with Bart's. If I deleted it, I knew that would cause problems with missing joints and vertices. So instead, I decided to just shrink it and tuck it away underneath the fly's head. The smoothing tool was perfect for this. Suddenly Bart's head was nothing but this little blob, after which I started sculpting the fly and creating its trunk thing. Optimistically, I even dabbled in trying out Blender's hair particle system, though there was no chance this was going to work in the game itself. I did want to add some hair though, since it really does add to the grossness, but before all that I had more UV mapping pain to deal with. Much like my last mod, I'm going to gloss over a lot of the texturing problems I had. It became very clear to me that I have no clue how to texture efficiently in this program, since I kept getting black spots and weird patches of shading. I persevered, although something else went terribly wrong when I booted up the game and saw this. Clearly that neck attachment hadn't quite worked out. A little readjustment and there we go, much better. Plus now the eyes were nice and shiny too. Back to Blender for some final tweaks. The eyes were really missing that border around them, so I added those in, fattened out the whole thing, and thought again about the hair. The simple answer was to add some planes around the head and apply a hair texture that I whipped up in Photoshop. Oh, the boy monster was complete, and all I can say is fly caramba! He's ready to go on a sugar-induced rampage with Milhouse as his first target. Last up, it's Lisa. Just like her dad, I had the perfect idea in mind for little Lisa Simpson, and once again it's not from a Treehouse of Horror. Instead it's from one of the highest rated episodes of the entire show, Last Exit to Springfield, in which Homer has to restore the power plant's dental plan because
Lisa needs braces.
thanks to a wonderfully disturbing vision of 18-year-old Lisa without them, I've got just the image to try and replicate in Blender. And let me tell you, in comparison to everything else, this was a piece of cake. Perhaps it was due to everything I'd learned along the way, or maybe it was the sheer passion I had recreating something so nasty, but I think it's the best of the bunch. I twisted up her face and, just like before, formed some teeth out of her mouth topology, taking one point and pulling it all the way up through her eye. Speaking of which, that eye had to stay closed, so I separated out its texture and kept it just yellow so it wouldn't blink. There was a bit more stitching and smoothing, but you get the point by now. Let me show you the end result. It's awful, and I love it. Better yet, it all moves accordingly whenever she speaks. Thank God Homer got that dental plan back, eh? And there we have it, The Simpsons modded into this horrific nightmare of a family. I'm sure Maggie is counting her blessings for not being a playable character in the game. If for some strange reason you'd like to play through the game with these dreadful faces in it, you can download the mod using the link in the description below. Bear in mind you'll need a copy of the game on PC and Lucas's hit and run launcher to load it up. Now I'm interested in what bits from the show you would have picked if you were making this mod. I've probably forgot loads of potential ideas, including from newer episodes, but hey, I try to avoid those since they really do give me nightmares. Happy Halloween everyone! I'm off to go carve some pumpkins and leave them out all year round.